Why settle for incremental growth when you can boost your revenue, cut costs, and adopt new technology more quickly? Why navigate the complexities of AI and the complex tech projects or technology projects alone when you can have insights from the forefront runners and the innovation providers such as Glorium Technologies? What the world's leading AI and technology experts are doing right now to transform healthcare and life science organizations and drive unparalleled growth right now is what we're discussing in these podcasts. This podcast is your gateway to the answers, providing a deep dive into the world of artificial intelligence and its power to amplify your revenue, to cut costs and adopt those efficiencies that are critical to deliver patient care, especially around healthcare and life sciences. So my name is Dudley Peacock, and I'm joined by our AI and technology expert, our resident expert, Dmitriy Stepanov. And welcome to our podcast, The Revenue Amplifier, AI in Action. Hello and welcome everyone to Revenue Amplifier Podcast, and welcome to an episode where we probably won't be that technical today. We got our resident expert, Dmitry. Dmitry is really the guy that knows loads, I would say, the breadth and extent of Dmitry's knowledge and experience in not just AI, but technology, and has been a career expert in this space for a long time. So I think Dmitry's ability to understand not just the technical side of things, but there's another part that we sometimes neglect to talk about, Dmitry. And today, I think today's title really is Obstacles to Adopting AI in Healthcare. And we're talking about the people. I mean, people, doesn't matter how great the technology is, if people aren't using it and adopting it and making use of it, where are we? So let's have a chat about that.
Yeah, that's actually a good topic, and I mean, let's start chat about it. Actually, I guess slicing this problem into few categories, I would say, because when you're talking about challenges, how to implement any new technology, it's not just artificial intelligence, but any new technologies. You should look at those challenges through different aspects, right? So you have executive view, you have mid-management view, and you have people who actually, well, I mean, I can say do the work, but I mean, you understand what I'm talking about, right? I mean, especially in the healthcare, we're talking about nurses, we're talking about doctors, we're talking about some office managers, we're talking about customer support. So people who actually are using this technology on the daily basis to take care about patients, to take care about business, okay? And that's actually very interesting to see, because it's not, well, I mean, well, obviously they do intersect, they do have some common denominator, but obviously there are different pains, there are different challenges, and there are different efforts on all the three levels, okay? So why don't we start with the executive level, I guess, if you don't mind. Right.
Yeah, I think executive is normally where let's say the money sits. I mean, if we're going executive, middle management, and then your let's call it your blue collar or your regular workers. And when I say regular workers, it could be all the way down to cleaners, to people that are doing the maintenance around the different venues, etc. But from an executive point of view, I mean, tell us a bit about those. What you think is the focus for executives?
Well, I guess one of the biggest one is strategic alignment, because artificial intelligence is so different from any other new technology. It's literally, it's almost like tectonic shifting in a business approach, in what you do, how you involve people, how you involve technology, how you connect different pieces, knowledge-wise, that you do need to have a good understanding, I guess, a good sense of technology, a good sense of options to build a proper strategic roadmap Well, first of all, to be up to date with the technologies, even so healthcare industry is traditionally conservative, but still you need to be up to date, even with these conservative approaches. And we'll selecting proper technologies, selecting proper tools, proper people, proper everything, basically, right? And in which direction you want to move your product or your business, just in general, the vector of the business. It's very actually hard, and a lot of people, a lot of executive offices do struggle with these activities because they just don't know what it is. They don't know all options. They don't know all possibilities, and they frequently do make mistakes. So that's actually, I guess, and they do afraid to make those mistakes, by the way.
Yeah, if I could quote one of my business mentors from many years ago, and one of his things he used to say, and he says, Dudley, don't forget, this is one of the fundamental principles of strategy, is that strategy and structure, because there's a difference between the two. The structure are all your infrastructure things, your processes, procedures, standard operational procedures, all the way to your people, your technologies, and so on. And then you got the strategy. It's like, how are you going to use the structure, those assets, if you like, those various components. And strategy, he used to say, make sure that strategy is always leading structure. And what tends to happen with executives is that sometimes we get stuck with what we've got, and we try to then form a strategy based on what we've got right now. So we say the structure is leading the strategy. In fact, the strategy should lead the structure. So you should always be thinking about strategy. This is from my business mentor in terms of where should we be going, regardless of where we are right now. What is the right direction and the vision and the sort of the almost like the future? What does that look like in 5 and 10, 15 years time? And then let's have a look then if the structure will help us get there. And if not, what are the missing parts? And I think you were absolutely right when you said strategic alignment. So strategic alignment is making sure the strategy is in place, then aligning the structure, the actual assets, the components, the technology, the people, the processes, your equipment, where you are. Maybe geographically you're located in a place that's busy declining, and maybe you even need to move to a place that's on the upswing, or maybe there's a different market need at the moment, and those kind of things are critical. So I think when we're dealing with AI, we're not just dealing with a few bits and pieces of code and a bit of automation. We're dealing with a critical component, which is that strategic alignment between where the leadership and the executive want to go compared to what they've got right now.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. And I remember I was talking to one of the executives about no, it wasn't artificial intelligence. It was about other new technology. It was a few years ago. And he basically said, well, I mean, if you want to stay up to date with the new technologies, and I think AI is definitely the case related to what I'm about to say. He said, well, you always need to learn, right? I mean, we all need to learn something new. But when you meet a new technology, significant change, significantly different technology, such as artificial intelligence, what you actually need to do, you need to unlearn and relearn. So you cannot actually apply your old habits, your old knowledge, your old approaches to the new technology. It could be so biased to the old, outdated approaches, whatever they are, doesn't really matter. That it actually can break the structure, it can break the strategy alignment, and it can lead the company in totally wrong direction. So that's actually one of the pieces that executives needs to know: unlearn and relearn.
Unlearn and relearn, and not be held back. I think we call that inertia. I think the inertia, the things that it's like a big magnetic force that holds people back from on making strategic change.
I prefer not to tell them that you don't have, well, you have inertia. I prefer to tell people, well, just unlearn and relearn. It's a more nicer way to communicate the same idea.
But saying that, I mean, in one of your previous podcasts, you brought up, your things with your children, and I'm thinking about my kids. So they still, I mean, they're not old. I mean, my eldest is now around 29, and my youngest is 19. A bit of an age gap between, from 1 and 4. But the strange thing is how quickly they start developing habits, even though they are young, and one would think forward thinking in terms of their technological know-how, and they can just pick up a gadget and start working it. It's really crazy for me how quickly they pick up habits and how they stick to those habits. And it's almost like sometimes you have to say, okay, let's think about it differently. Let's reform new habits. And it's almost that thing. It's human nature to be stuck. And it takes real, true, strong, powerful leadership to say, wait a minute, I need to switch my own brain first, get the strategy in place so I can bring my team along with me.
Or, science tells that, it's actually controversial, but still science tells that our brain, as we age, become less and less pliable, I guess, proper word here. And unfortunately, we do struggle to adjust to some significant changes. And it's okay, actually, because obviously each type of brain has its own benefit. And I guess my recommendation in this case, business needs to understand that, well, they are not capable to absorb some ideas. They're not capable to process those ideas. That's fine. So find someone who can actually do this. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of professionals who can do this, who can help to shape strategic alignment to the company and make sure that it works. So that's actually, I guess, balancing the young generation. Nothing wrong about this at all. I always do this in my activities. That's actually...
And it's also bringing in diversity. It's bringing in different voices and even people from within that maybe from the lower levels of let's say, your employment structures, for them to even help you with ideas and things, because they might even know things that you don't. Yep. And then the other is looking at outside parties. I mean, even if you look at Glorium Technologies, if you look at the AI, the Chief AI Officer services that we present, the idea there is to at least have a conversation. And that's one of the things that we do help. And we got a 90-minute free workshop that we present just to say, this is where everything is right now. Okay, things are still changing. This is not static, but at least we can give you a view of where things are right now. So helping you with that strategic alignment, especially if you're in an executive or even a middle management position.
Yep, that's true. That's true. Let's move to the next one, I guess, obstacles. This is cost management. And from the cost management, there are actually two things, main pieces, and I think we can separate it. One of them is, artificial intelligence does require to have pretty substantial investment at the beginning. We're talking about development, we're talking about, data collection, we're talking about integrations. So it's a pretty big investment from the beginning. And obviously, if you are executive and if you are making decisions which impact company from the financial standpoint, you need to understand the financial benefits, ROI, or any other metrics that company uses to control its financial metrics. And another thing is actually a lot of companies, because of this obstacle, they don't have tools, they don't have capabilities to actually evaluate the initial investment. They either significantly underestimate or significantly overestimate what needs to be invested in the artificial intelligence. Because some solutions, like, virtual assistant, for example, with the current level of all kind of tools available, toolkits, frameworks, it's relatively cheap even for the small startup to implement. Well, obviously, I mean, as you make it more complicated, the cost is growing, but you can enter AI for pretty small investment. But if you're talking about something more serious and some data management, some data processing and everything else, the ticket can be pretty pricey, and you need to understand, well, initial investment, if you have actually funds available, if you have cash flow available, and you do need to understand how it will impact your, as I said, financial metrics. So that's kind of very important, and executive also have a lot of, I guess, trouble with the cost management related to artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I think there's one sort of tip that I could share with some of the executives, and that is don't always take it as the price you pay. You should be looking at it the value that you get.
Yeah,
so the price you pay is not always equal to the value that you get. So let's assume you can implement even something small, a $2,000 or $5,000 or a $10,000 change, or an AI app, or some kind of little development that you can do that might only cost a few $1,000s, but the value might be that you're saving 10, 12, 15 man days in 5 or 6 of your departments for at least 3 or 4 admin people per department, kind of thing. If you look at the value, you can't put the value in terms of the salaries you would save in terms of man days, but you could potentially put the value in the place that you could say, now that these people are less busy with doing things that are mundane and repetitive, and potentially that just a machine can take over, now they can be busier with other things that are of much higher leverage to the business. And that leverage to the business, or to the healthcare entity, is very difficult to quantify, because now they can do so much more things that they could not get to before.
Yep.
Or alternatively, you may be in an expansion path, and you don't now, if you take on an AI, let's say a program, and you are able to reduce the man days that it takes to do up something, you could potentially not have to employ more people as you expand and grow, because healthcare in certain sectors is growing. Always thinking about what it is that's important, from how many people do we need, how few people do we need to do as much work as possible.
Yeah.
So by bringing in AI, you could almost, by saving man days, you can get people to do more, which is productivity improvement. And that's why I talk about the cost, that the price that you pay is not always equal to the value that you get. And that cost management is very difficult exercise to do.
Yes, and Dudley, value on average, I want to emphasize, the value is there. So now numbers tell us that there are significant savings, as you said, in the working time, and well, I mean, we're not gonna discuss how exactly it impacts human resources, but there are savings on the repetitive tasks. There are more efficient approaches to many tasks. There is definitely a growth in revenue, again, on average on the market. And by the way, the growth in revenue related to artificial intelligence is growing, and it's growing exponentially, by the way. And I mean, I believe we did touch this topic during our last podcast, but this year alone, on average, artificial intelligence is about 5% from the overall healthcare revenues. So that's a pretty significant. So you literally, as I said, losing 5% of your revenue if you're not in artificial intelligence. But again, on average, it doesn't mean that artificial intelligence fits every single product, every single process, but from my experience, it does fit majority of the products. It does fit majority of the processes. It's just not mature in some cases, but again, we see such dramatic growth over past 12 months that if this growth will be sustainable like this, we're gonna cover pretty much every single aspect of healthcare in next couple of years.
And I think also there's one other element, and that's the compound effect as well. Because if you're making a certain group of people more effective or more productive in a particular area in an entity,
Right.
a healthcare business of some sort, there's going to be knock-on effects in that they are able now to get to more things, which means the knock-on effect on other people, which means that they potentially now, instead of waiting 24 hours or 48 hours to get something done, they can potentially do it in 2 hours, which makes somebody else more productive. And so there's almost an unintended snowball effect that starts to happen. You just make small changes in certain areas,
Yes.
and it's sort of the 80-20 principles. Sometimes just focusing on some of the small changes has got a massive 80% impact. The good old Pareto principle we always come back to that we learned many years ago in business school. Let's go into regulatory compliance. So regulation and that. So executives obviously always worried about data safety and all that.
True, but I was talking to one of the teams, and basically the conversation went into this direction, regulation compliance issues. And I told them, hey guys, do you have a data compliance in place in your company? Of course we do. We have ISO, we have SOC 2, we have this, we have that. So why are you worried? I mean, it's literally the same with just few different adjustments. You literally must have review your compliance, your processes, your procedures from artificial intelligence, because sooner or later you will touch this area, not within yourself, but through the integration, through the third party, through the way exactly you're going to deploy it. It's going to be there. And you must be in compliance regardless of your investment in AI or not being interested in AI, to be frank. Obviously, there are some challenges because regulation is floating, I guess, and a lot of changes. Different states do right now making different changes, and they're actually different. Like you literally need to go state by state. Delaware is totally different from California, for example, from artificial intelligence standpoint. They are moving in about the same direction, but it's about responsibility. It's about who is responsible from the mistakes and who is protected, and what needs to be done to make sure that it's properly done, properly implemented, properly controlled. But again, it's not that significant from the complexity of regulatory compliance related to data security, related to algorithm security. It's just different angle, and that's it. So, but it is an obstacle. It's a lot of executives are holding on the implementation because they're afraid of some complications in this area.
Yeah, and regulatory compliance comes often from external bodies,
Yes.
and government agencies and other types of
Not something you control, right?
Something you can control. So it's almost as if what you got to do is you got to say, look, if I look historically, regulatory compliance has often got a lag to it. There's a time lag to it. Your development, your technology moves ahead, and then regulatory compliance sort of starts to kick in. And if there are any things that you are maybe not 100% in compliance with for future regulations, for instance, don't worry about that, because over time, what's going to happen is all of that will eventually be adopted or taken into account based on, because not even the regulators know which direction things are going. Nobody knows. There's one thing I saw this week. There's the release of 5.3, which is an app, which is your own little GPT you can put onto your phone, and it's completely what is that word? Air gap. So in other words, you on your phone, it is not connected to the internet at all. And it's the first version of having your own app that's on your phone that is a GPT type of, or it's called a generative AI app, but is not connected directly to the internet. In other words, you can have a completely your own AI version, or generative or predictive AI, without being exposed to the external internet world, which
Right.
I think that's the biggest fear people have, is this is connected to the internet, and I don't know who sees and does what with my data.
Yeah, I mean, and you're absolutely right. I mean, on-premises models is kind of guaranteed security safeguard and prevents from getting your data outside of the internet. But again, it's just like a common sense. You do not deploy your database in open environment in internet, right? I mean, you cover
In any
it.
case,
Yeah, you put it in the private network. You putting all kind of firewalls, VPNs, access control, and it's a common sense, right? It makes sense. Same with artificial intelligence, as I said. There is no significant difference. You just literally apply common sense to what you're doing, and 99.9% you will be within compliance, because compliance, well, usually it has some common sense, and it's actually based on the best practices. If we're talking about the same SOC 2 or ISO 27000, it's a industry practices that people learn about it, got some common sense approaches, and they just implement these common sense approaches through those standards, security standards. So there is nothing to be afraid of. But
it doesn't mean just common sense and the normal regulation and protection doesn't just get thrown out the window because now we've got what seems to be radically new technology. So let's move on to the change management aspect, because I think if executives, when they're thinking about AI and all this new technology, and they say, "Oh, here we go again. We're going to do all kinds of new things."
Well, what is it, like maybe 20 years ago, let's say, chief security officer, who is as a role, I'm not talking about person. Why do you need chief security officer? What kind of role it is? These days, if organization has some compliance, if we're getting to the compliance, you must have this role in your company. I mean, the person can share several roles, as usually if it's a small startup and everything else, but this is a role, and this role has specific requirements, specific responsibilities, and this role needs to perform this and that and that. And just like with any new technology, artificial intelligence requires new roles as well. And we're talking about from the technical standpoint, from the security standpoint, from the planning standpoint, and actually we're talking about, pretty much from any standpoint, you need to review, well, depending again on your application, complexity of the system, and so on and so on. And it does impact company infrastructure, because you literally have different structure now, you have different responsibilities, different connections, and it's a pretty big shift. So companies need to be open for changes, including role changes. So, and those changes, it's not like, oh, now we have this role related to artificial intelligence. Now you need to create specific procedures, right, related to this role, responsibilities, how exactly it communicates, to whom it communicates, what's the data flow, what's this, what that, and that's it's not just, oh, we will implement AI and it will work somehow. No, it's slightly
somehow by itself. It's a plug and play. There's also the change management within people that have been at the company for a long time. Even their job descriptions, maybe once you've implemented AI, there are certain parts of their jobs they would do on a daily basis have now been either removed or reduced or changed. And this now needs to be brought in a manner that's done in the correct way, without getting people's backs up or getting people concerned. And I think because we're focusing on this episode, let's just focus on the executive, because maybe in a following episode we'll look at the middle management, and then we'll look at the entry level management maybe at a following episode, because each one of these topics, they're a different group of people that have got different concerns, different issues that they have to deal with. And these are the kind of conversations that we're having every day with people that are trying to say, look, we need AI, but we just don't know how, or how do we do this? Where do we go? But if you look at the change management side of things, it almost always starts with HR having conversations, maybe bringing in training programs, maybe even just an awareness program in the organization. And with Glorium Technologies, what we can arrange for clients is that we can actually come in and say, okay, what are the primary departments you might want to potentially deploy AI in the next 3 to 6, 12 months? Let's start a training program right now. Let's come in and spend 3 hours or 2 hours with a particular team. Let's discuss where we can go, what we can do. Maybe we can even start building out brainstorm groups that could start thinking about where can AI potentially assist them in their day-to-day activities. Because when we do deep dives and you go in and have a look at the individual workflows of every single person in the company, there's tons of savings to be had. But I think the place to start would be maybe just a straightforward education program if we're looking at change management. So one of the things I would like to suggest, I don't know, Dmitry, if you want to back me up on this, but I think that one of the first steps should potentially be a rollout of just an awareness education-based program.
Dudley, you nailed another obstacle, which is separate but kind of related. I mean, they're all to some extent related. It's a stakeholder engagement. Because if executives, they want to, push, let's use this word, push artificial intelligence through the company, they do need to engage with all stakeholders. I mean, we're talking about the whole vertical, starting from the blue collar and entire executive office, because resistance on any level will stop any engagement, will stop any progress, will stop any implementation, because those people on every level, they know where AI can be used. Well, they don't know without education, they don't know without engagement, but with a proper approach, with a proper question, those are the people who actually provide absolutely unreplaceable insights to where it's used, where it's useful, what's the best way to implement here or there. And we're talking about, by the way, everything. We're talking about and change management and regulatory compliance and scalability and ethical question. And without this stakeholder engagement aspect, it's a pretty much done deal. So if the company cannot pull everybody on the same page, or absolutely majority of the company on the same page, then it's a first step in AI strategic planning, I would say.
Yeah, and so now you need your HR people in place. You need to maybe put aside some budget for the education and awareness program. Because from our experience, we can definitely say that everybody is thinking about it. Everybody, even though they might not have been fully exposed or using it at their work, they've heard at home, maybe with their friends, maybe someone on the news, I don't know, whatever, but they've heard of this thing called AI. And there could be an uncertainty. I think the quicker you roll out an education program, a stakeholder buy-in and engagement, I think the quicker you'll get a handle on sort of all this hype sort of calming down, and then doing a proper rational, I think you call it common sense approach to rolling out AI.
Yep. And that's actually...
No, sorry. I was just going to say, let's tackle scalability and integration, but finish your point and then we can go into that.
That's okay. We can scalability and integration.
Okay,
well, I mean, it's kind of related again to the strategic view, but executives, they do need to have a very clear picture how artificial intelligence will be, I guess, scaled across the organization, and including all departments, because some people think that, well, I mean, I implement a virtual assistant and it's an AI and I'm done. While you can put a badge, AI, artificial intelligence, in our business company product, and be done. But it's not actually that as simple as this. And AI, as I said before, AI will be in pretty much every single department, in every single solution, just like computers are totally. You cannot imagine business without having some. Without IT department, you cannot imagine business without computerization of pretty much every single step, right? Same it's going to be with artificial intelligence, and these scalabilities, and it's going to be much faster than computerization that happened in 80s, 90s. It's going to be literally, we're talking about few years. And this quick spreading of the artificial intelligence into every single aspect of the business, companies, that needs to be taken in the consideration in strategic planning, into the change management, into pretty much, as I said, any aspect of operations of the company. And we're talking about some technical challenges. We're talking about human resource challenges associated with this, training, and again, all aspects. So just to, I guess, to understand the scale, understand the impact, understand that the scale will be big regardless of our opinion about artificial intelligence, that might help. But people they're very reluctant to those ideas, for now at least.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about sort of let's look at a practical example. If I think of the NHS here in the UK,
Yes,
and I think about the let's call it the migration of medical staff, for instance, in the hospitals and theaters, etc. And you have people from multiple countries all coming in with similar qualifications, working together. They got different languages. We spoke in one of our earlier podcasts about engineers talking differently to architects talking, even though they might speak the same language. So if you come from a different country and you're a doctor and you have to engage maybe with a patient, and your first language is not English, and their first language may or may not be English, and you're trying to explain or trying to diagnose or trying to collect information or even just share information or amongst your colleagues, there's
right.
Now, I saw this week, they're now working heavily on, and it's making substantial progress, is real-time translation, language translation. So you could literally have, let's say, like a plug in your ear or some kind of earphone, and as you're speaking to someone, it translates for you as they're speaking, and you understand them in real time, what they're saying, and you can then, when you reply, the reverse happens, and they're understanding you in I would say probably a very accurate, or probably more accurate to a large extent eventually once it's mature, would be more accurate in terms of you each speaking your own mother tongue and then allowing AI to do the communication or the translation for you. And this kind of thing could revolutionize the migration and the use of people that would find it difficult to integrate and adopt a new language or to be able to apply their trade in different places. And this is just an example. So when we talk about scalability, this AI thing, in terms of scale, it's going to explode. It's going to go into different places.
It is. And
that you don't even think.
Yeah, and that's actually, I have another point to add to scalability, which is related, I think, to executive and every business owner. So you do remember .com crash in, 2000? Yeah, well, it was around 2000, right? It wasn't just sudden, but somewhat spread around a few months. And it happened because so many companies rushed into software world without thinking about consequences, business plan, strategic plan, right? And obviously, such rush led to this crash. And what I started seeing, at least in the news, that we might approaching similar crash in artificial intelligence, right? It's actually, even so, I don't see from the other side of this world, like from the implementing, talking to businesses, seeing the progress in artificial intelligence, that we're not even near to peak to crash in order to crash. But the thing is here, actually, what I think the conclusions can be done from those thoughts. Let me put it this way, not news, but those thoughts. I mean, those thoughts do exist in pretty much every businessman. Like, what if it will crash? It actually might, to be frank. I mean, like, just like any other stuff, right? We don't know. But if you think about it more carefully, what crashed in 2000s, the company who didn't have a clear plan, the company who didn't have a clear strategic plan, didn't have all kind of risk management, data governance, staff management, engagement, stakeholder engagement. So a lot of mistakes were done because of this rush to implement it. And even if we will have something like this in artificial intelligence, it's actually going to be good because it will clean up the garbage that hold us back in the artificial intelligence development, and it will clean up the entities that don't care or just completely ignoring safety nets related to technologies. And the company who has properly implemented strategic planning, internal processes, people, technology selection very carefully, they will stay afloat, and we will have kind of clean beginning. But again, it's just big if, first of all, and second of all, I think it's just a lesson that we need to remember when we approach to artificial intelligence. So we, as a whole industry, wouldn't repeat the same mistake and wouldn't have similar crash as .com 24 years ago. So that's about scalability and integration, I guess.
No, exactly right. And then if we just, so as our last point before we close off on the podcast now, evaluating AI performance from an executive perspective, because one of the big things is, okay, this sounds great, let's go for it, but how do we know it's working?
That's actually another thing. I mean, even so, it's kind of on the surface, you need to evaluate, from the financial standpoint, from the, data performance standpoint, from the client retention, from client complaints. So, you can select 1,000 metrics, but it's actually very hard to, first of all, to determine those metrics, to track them, because it's very hard to separate artificial intelligence part from any other part of the business and have this incremental add-on value and see where exactly AI brought the value. But it's possible, and obviously it is a crucial piece to actually measure the success of any new technology you're trying to implement. And again, even so, it's a kind of obstacle for some executives because they don't know how to do it. But there are already solutions in place. There are already approaches in place. So just again, come up yourself or find expert who can help you to do it quicker.
Yeah, very good. That's a great way to end today's podcast, and I think it's quite a good one, because I think these are the things that are on people's minds. I mean, we can go into a lot of technical jargon and all the fancy stuff, and everyone can get massively excited, but this is pretty much where the rubber hits the road kind of thing, where it becomes real. And I like your common sense approach. I like the let's call it pragmatic way in the way that you deal with these critical issues in these organizations. Any sort of last thoughts that you might have just to tie it up?
Well, I guess again, it was said so many times, but I guess I'm gonna say it again. We will have obstacles in AI direction, but we shouldn't afraid to tackle them. We shouldn't afraid to move forward, because that's the future. It's totally unavoidable future of business. near future. We're not talking about 10, 20 years. We're talking about now.
It's happening. We're in the middle of it right now. So anyway, thank you, Dmitry, our resident expert on AI, our chief AI officer at Glorium Technologies. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again on another episode of the Revenue Amplifier for healthcare and life sciences businesses. I just want to re-invite you again. Please have a look at the description below on this video. Have a look there. There are a few links there. Click on them. Go through to some of our pages. There's some really interesting information. There's ways to get hold of us. And I think maybe try and think about what the best way to go forward is. Maybe take us up on our 90-minute presentation. It's free. We'll either do it on site or via sort of some online platform like Zoom or Teams or something like that. Let's go through where AI is today and how it can influence and impact and actually positively take your company forward, your healthcare and life sciences business. And if the 90-minute then is something that you'd like, get hold of us. If you're thinking about awareness and education across your organization, let's chat about that, because it's quite easy to put a program together specifically, uniquely developed for your organization and for various departments you might think or maybe the initial departments you want to start rolling out AI and AI technologies in your organization. Please have a look at the description below. Again, also just subscribe and make sure you click the little bell so that on YouTube it reminds you when we got another podcast. But every week we're online and we're trying to keep you up to date with where everything is. Thanks very much. Thanks for joining us, and see you on the next episode.
Thank you. See you next week.